Joining us tonight for open dialogue and learning. We have amazing panelists. I want to first let everyone know that tonight's webinar will be recorded, so if you can't make the whole evening, you'll not miss a thing. My name is Christine Judd. I'm the director of Roca, Western Mass, with sites in Springfield and Holyoke. To Roca, no young person is lost cause, even if we've lost all trust and hope for the future. Our young people can count on us to show up even when they fail. We never give up. The relentlessness is how we build trust over time and give our young people the tools and support to change the trajectory of their lives. I want to personally say thank you to members of my managing board and members of the Teach for America innovation team for helping me put together a robust webinar series. I am proud of their work, and it has been a privilege to work with this dynamic group. Thank you for joining us for our first ever spring webinar series. Tonight's topic is multi-agency approach to the school to the prison pipeline.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for spending your Wednesday evening with us today. My name is Tatiana Soto. My pronouns are she and hers. I'm based out of Springfield, Massachusetts. I am a part of Teach for America's innovation team, and I will be your facilitator tonight. Before we jump in, I want to give my colleague an opportunity to introduce herself.
There, my name is Ellie Demuth. I'm also a Teach for America staff member on our innovation lab. I am Tatiana's colleague. I will be working the background tonight. If you need anything, throw it into the chat and I will do my best to assist you. Also, don't forget to put your questions in the chat. We're hoping to elevate them during our Q&A time, so we'll be tracking all the questions. So even if it gets lost, don't worry, we have an eye on it. And we hope you enjoy. Tatiana, back to you.
Thank you, Ellie and Tassi, for working the behind the scenes magic. As representatives of Teach for America, Ellie and I are deeply appreciative of our partnership with Roca and the work that they're doing to support individuals affected by the school to prison pipeline. We wanted to take a moment to personally thank Chris, Tassi, Lakeisha, Natasha, Jen, and all other Roca members for being so welcoming as we've partnered over the last 5 months. Our partnership has grown in part due to our shared vision of disrupting systems at the intersection of educational inequity. We deeply understand how multifaceted and interconnected these issues are. We're excited today to spend some time focusing on the school to prison pipeline. Data has shown that youth typically come in contact with the justice system for the first time during school. Today, we'd like to dig in a bit further into the issues, reforms, and some alternatives that exist within this community. We fundamentally believe that through collective systems thinking, we will get closer to achieving our individual missions. We are doing community. On this call, we have folks from all over Western Mass and Massachusetts. Just quickly scrolling through the registrants list, I see here Madison Park, Springfield Police, Public Council, Northeastern, Amherst, Springfield City Hall. I really could go on and on. Lastly, I have to highlight that this is the second, that this conversation on the school to prison pipeline is the second of 3 webinars, as Chris mentioned, that Roca will be hosting. Last month, Lakeisha and Natasha kicked us off by hosting a conversation around Roca's DEI practices. So please stay tuned for more information on next month's conversation around urban violence. Whew, that will be the last you'll be hearing that much from me tonight. With all of that being said, I'd like to ground us in what the next hour or so will look like. So in our agenda, first we'll begin with a video to ground us in a shared understanding of the topic at hand. Then we'll hear from our amazing panelists. And lastly, we'll open the conversation for the question and answer portion of the night. With that, Ellie, could you start the video and let's dive in.
Kids get pushed out of public The school to prison pipeline. It's a term that describes how American kids get pushed out of public schools and into the juvenile and criminal justice systems. Basically, harsh zero-tolerance policies in schools have led to more suspensions, expulsions, and even in-school arrests. Getting suspended or expelled means more time away from school, and it doesn't take an honor student to figure out that's bad news. In fact, expelled and suspended students are more likely to get held back a grade, end up in juvie, or just drop out altogether. And dropping out of high school makes you 3 times more likely to get arrested. Back in school, forget about hallway monitors. Students these days often have to deal with school police. Minor offenses that might have landed you in the principal's office back in the day can now actually lead to your arrest. Students of color and those with disabilities are disproportionately affected. Black students get expelled 3 times more than their white classmates, while a student with a disability is 2 times more likely to get an out-of-school suspension than everyone else. And it's not because these kids are just bad apples. The Justice Department found that black students got harsher punishments than their white peers for doing the same things. So maybe it's time our education system got schooled?
Now that we've grounded ourselves in a shared understanding of the school to prison pipeline generally, I'd like to start our dialogue with Katie Byrne. Thanks for joining us, Katie. Could you briefly introduce yourself, explain your work or organization and how it's interrupting the school to prison pipeline, and lastly, how you're assisting individuals affected by this system?
Yes, thank you. I am Katie Byrne, and I work for the Department of Youth Services. I'm the detention reform specialist on an initiative called the Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative, which aims to prevent the use of pretrial detention for young people in Massachusetts. And part of our work, and what's most relevant to what I'm speaking about today, is raising awareness around the dangers of system involvement. And we attempt through our work to build coalitions of folks that understand the changes which are within their locus of control. And I first want to start my portion of this panel tonight by evoking an image. And the image that I want to bring forward is one of a ripple. And when you think of a ripple, you think of this initial drop that happens, and then the impact of that drop developing these concentric circles out from the middle. And what does that have to do with the school pipeline? Well, what do we know about the drop? What is that first incident that creates that ripple effect that has a massive impact in the lives of young people? It could be school discipline, things like suspensions, expulsions, emergency removals. What we saw in that video is also happening in Massachusetts. Those same statistics on disparities are happening in our state. Okay, I think I'm now unmuted. I might have been accidentally muted. And we know that school discipline in Massachusetts is more likely to impact students of color, economically disadvantaged students, and students with disabilities. And all of the data that I'm citing tonight, I'm going to link a file in the chat. And so everyone's able to kind of see this for themselves. And it's, I think, part of why I wanted to bring up the data that is readily available and something that everyone can access is because I think data transparency is very important. The more that we can put it in front of our faces and see for ourselves these stark disparities, I think the better. So I will be linking a file that you can kind of access these data points. So if we just isolate though, out of school suspensions, that one discipline decision, it's higher for those same categories. The students with disabilities, economically disadvantaged, and students of color. And when we look at non-violent, non-drug, and non-criminal offenses as those that fall under the school discipline category, we see from this data that half in Springfield District, all of Springfield Public School District, were for those offenses, non-violent, non-drug, and non-criminal. And when we look at Holyoke High School, over 3/4 of school discipline were for those offenses, if you can call them that. I also want to lift up and bring forward a Massachusetts statute that grants power to schools to remove young people. And this is under the Massachusetts statute, chapter 71, and it's 37H1/2. And if it says that if a student is charged with a felony, they may be suspended. If they are convicted of a felony, they may be expelled. And so that's one, I think, thing that you can kind of dig into and understand. What are the policies, even if they seem legitimate, what kinds of unintended consequences can they have to push people out of school? And what else could the drop be? What could that initial impact be if not discipline? It could be arrests in schools by school resource officers. We saw that in the video. That's also happening in Massachusetts. It could be truancy filings or filings with the juvenile court on a child welfare matter, a child requiring assistance. It's from schools that initiate this DCF involvement. And that can lead eventually to involvement in the juvenile legal system on the delinquency end. And that's always a red flag for us in JDAI, because we see that a lot of young people who come into the Department of Youth Services have prior or current DCF involvement. That initial drop could also be being pushed out for a variety of reasons. It could be an arrest or an incident in the community after an out of school suspension. And we see the be into detention because arrest can stem from residential DCI schools. And so what I want to also lift up is that system involvement stemming from this initial drop, whatever it may be, is not a benign intervention. There are inherent risks associated with system involvement. And what the system doesn't do is address root causes to all of this. It's not built to deal with root causes. And despite some of the reforms that have happened within the system, it is still a punitive and carceral place. And the process to resolving a harm or an incident or some sort of infraction within the court, if it's pushed to that end, is inherently adversarial. So we're not using the system to mend these infractions through a healing or a restorative process. It's inherently adversarial, and that doesn't bode well for the young person. And I also want to bring in the idea of investing our money. And I don't believe that investing our money in this way, when we push folks into the system, that we're doing it in a smart way, because we haven't really dealt with the cause. And what about the system in particular? You know, I'm focused in my work on the Department of Youth Services. And what do we know about that? And so when we think about kind of the ripple going out, that ripple that I'm most concerned about is entrance into the juvenile legal system. And we see that that system detains youth of color at a higher rate and for longer than white youth. And I want to lift up some of the data points. I know I said I would put it in the chat, I will, but I think these are really important to just name. We see that Hispanic youth, age 12 to 17, the age of juvenile jurisdiction in Massachusetts, make up 17% of the youth population, but they make up 45% of the youth population in jails in Massachusetts. Black youth make up 10% of the youth population, but 27% in jails. White youth make up 65% of the youth population and 21% in jails. Around half of all detentions to DYS were kids with individualized education plans, or IEPs. So we see that same students with learning disabilities, or students with disabilities, could be learning disability, as most impacted by school discipline, also are so overrepresented in DYS. And we see that a small percentage of the total number of young people coming into detention are for weapons or drug charges. And those are the things that really create this narrative for us as a public safety threat, and the reason why we justify kind of the use of detention. But those are such a small number of the overall charges that we see. so I think we need to start, part of the work we do is raising awareness, but also to flip if we use to justify this. Because when we hear these statistics and we see that the disparity is so stark, you know, what do we do with that? And I think it's, you know, we can kind of land in this place where we start to justify it in some way. And historically and currently, some of that justification has been that youth of color are more dangerous or criminal. And that is just not the case. What we have to start thinking about is how the system is racist and criminalizes dark skin and pulls young people in at disproportionate rates because of that. And I'm wrapping up here. And I want to kind of illustrate kind of the next ripple, like why is the system dangerous? And some of the things I linked to are reports on kind of the problems of juvenile detention. But the one I want to just raise up here is the chances of going deeper are higher. That first contact is really risky because the chances of going deeper into the deep end of the system, being committed, kind of cycling in and out and in and out, are deeper from that first involvement. We spend hundreds of dollars a day per bed in Massachusetts. And what if we invested that money in another way and not kind of pushing it into a punitive and carceral system? And so I want to kind of just end with a few questions. And one is, you know, I guess maybe more of a rhetorical statement about, you know, if we see that the number of young people are in detention on the most serious charges, we're kind of using detention as a timeout. And because of that, it sounds to me like we're having our cake and eating it too, in a way, because we're being told, the narrative that we're being told is that prisons and jails, kind of this public safety utility. But if we're using it also as this timeout, which we hear in the system, kind of cycling in the system, that's what it's used for, just kind of like create some stability. What is the real purpose of it? And I do want to end with two questions. And I tend to operate from an abolitionist framework. So to me, it's not necessarily thinking about how to tweak the system as it is, but thinking of a vision of something new, a model of community care that currently doesn't exist, but I believe that we can build. And I think part of that question, part of that vision requires us to ask questions of ourselves and really think about the following questions of: how do you want to be held on your worst day? What about your child? And what do you expect of others in that moment? Compassion, understanding, helping us think about how we take responsibility for that, an opportunity for repair, and some immediacy around that. And the last question in my last statement here, or my last piece here, is: what if the options now for punishment were not at our disposal? What would you rebuild in their place?
Thank you, Katie. I found myself taking plenty of notes during your time. Thank you for highlighting the impact of unintended consequences when there are systemic interventions. Thank you for sharing the powerful statistics that is demonstrating exactly how racist the system is and how it's disproportionately affecting youth of color. And I also really appreciated your ripple analogy. Thank you for kicking us off. With that, I'd like to continue this conversation by asking Dr. Williams to introduce herself, explain how your work or organization is interrupting the school to prison pipeline, and how you're assisting individuals affected by this system. Well, just unmute right there, Dr. Williams.
Oh, okay. Good evening, everyone. I am, as my resume would say, I am a lifelong resident of Springfield, and I have extensive experience in the Springfield Public Schools. As my bio indicates, I started in Springfield Public Schools as a student, and I moved on to becoming an educator in the schools as a teacher, an administrator. I was a principal for almost 21 years here in the public school system. So I have a lens from different perspectives, student perspective, the classroom educator's perspective, the administrator's perspective. And now I serve on the board of Westfield State University, my alma mater. So I see what's happening with higher ed and when our children, those who are fortunate enough to make it to a university, how needy they are in terms of filling the gaps that we as educators perhaps have missed in their transition from high school until college. I also am a member of a cohort of experienced Black educators, and we have worked to lift our voices and as educational consultants. And our mission is to identify and address the educational failings and the academic struggles of African American students by using our voices as experienced educators, parents of African American children, and we're also community leaders. There are a group of 5 administrators, former administrators, and we have a combined years of service of more than 100 years of service here. So I was listening to Katie, and when she was saying that we need to tweak the system, I think the system needs an overhaul. We need to change it because I have seen many of the biases and the inequities that exist with discipline in the schools, particularly with our male students of color, the Latinx as well as the African American males are inherently treated differently, and they are judged more harshly. I have seen cases where educators have remanded students for discipline. It could be one Black student, one white student, however, they may have just been engaged in a fist fight, but the perception was that the person of color was the aggressor, and then the white person was not. Therefore, the discipline that was expected was to be different for the African American or the Latinx or the white student. So there are many biases that we have. There are some good things happening in our district, but there are many biases, and the biases come from the individuals who stand before these students every day, who wield the power over the lives of these young people who are just trying to make it through the system and become productive citizens. There's a phrase that there's is it a criminal act or is it just how children act? Because again, with fighting, most often the students of color, if it's a Black-white situation, students of color are treated more harshly. I've never done this, but I've witnessed and I know that oftentimes we have elementary school students who are referred to the police because of a fight or harsh words to the teachers or something that we would consider minor if we were doing those same things. Everything seems to be an offense rather than just the way students act. Talking back to a teacher could also get a student of color expelled or suspended from school. There's this big push, and it's been around in other countries for years, for the restorative justice piece, where you teach students conflict resolution rather than reprimanding them for disciplinary actions. And I think we can do more of that in the schools. And again, we look at early education. I think some of our African American males and Latinx are I don't want to say doomed, but they're looked upon as candidates for that pipeline to prison even before they enter school, when they're in the parents' womb, because poverty affects them. And so people have this perception that if a child comes from poor circumstances, that they're less bright, they're not intelligent. And so we tend to write them off before they even enter. And then you enter school and kindergarten. If you've not had any early education, we can hear the comments that these children are going to fail. There'll be failures before they enter third grade. And I don't know where they got this third grade from, because as an administrator, it was always my goal to instruct my staff that we take the children from where they are, and we don't write them off and say that there's a stopping point. There's a starting point. We take them from wherever they come, and it's our responsibility to teach the children and teach them well. We often hear people say that children can't read. I don't believe that any of that. They've just not been taught well. So in a sense, not everyone, but some people will, they fall into that belief system, and then they impose upon the students that self-fulfilling prophecy. If you hear it enough, you tend to believe it and you act like that. So you've got to have confidence, and we need to build the confidence. And I did get my 1 minute signal. We have to help build their confidence and let them know that we're not going to allow them to go to the pipeline, go through the pipeline. I was watching TV the other night. I don't know if anybody watched Iala when she made that very, very vivid presentation with young men who had some issues with school, and just, in fact, had them demonstrate where they were on the pipeline, and was trying to uncover the reasons for that. For many of our young men, particularly, they're disillusioned with school, because we get them in there, we promise them, we're going to educate you, you're going to graduate from high school and go on to college. Well, we all know that's a pipe dream for some of them. Our young people, some of them are graduating from school, and they don't have any dreams of going to college, because somewhere along the way, they've been made to believe that it's not for them. It is for them, but we've got to be able to help them feel confident enough and teach them and guide them the way. I see it. Ms. Judd is telling me that my time is up. So maybe during the question and answer session, I'd be able to answer some of your specific questions. But I thank you for the opportunity, because she must have seen my notes. I've got like 5 pages of notes here, an introduction that I didn't even get to. So I'll turn it back over to the moderator.
Thank you so much, Dr. Williams. I certainly did not want to stop you. You see, I didn't message you. I found myself also taking extensive notes, and really appreciative of your perspective, both from your extensive experience as a former school teacher, administrator, list goes on and on and on and on.
College
and now,
professor.
Professor, thank you.
Yeah.
And now as a professor and educational consultant, I was even more moved to know that you and your colleagues have come together to do this work and have over 100 years of experience.
Right. Our group is called COBE.
Nice.
Coalition of Experienced Black Educators.
Maybe we can throw that in the chat as well.
Okay.
And I was just really appreciative of your candor in speaking of really how the system needs to be overhauled. The situation is, it's just true. You illuminated it really quite clearly. Young men of color, particularly Black and Latinx men, are treated differently and harshly. And when you said that, I had to write it down, because it just, the gravity of it once again hit me. With that, I'd like to follow up this discussion of the issues with some alternatives and kick it to Josiah Gonzalez. Could you please introduce yourself, explain your work with your organization, and how it's interrupting the school to prison pipeline, and how you're assisting individuals affected by the system?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for handing it over this way, and good afternoon to everyone. Josiah Gonzalez here. I serve as the Director of Youth Services over at New North Citizens Council. And I'll just take a few minutes just to speak a little bit about our organizational history and who we are. So NNCC originally began as any other neighborhood council in the city of Springfield, but in 1973, NNCC was established as a multifaceted social service nonprofit. Today, our agency has sites across the city, offering financial support and case management for those with disabilities, substance abuse, recovery, etc., and an extensive list of youth services that we provide. Speaking more closely to the school to prison pipeline, all of the services that I oversee have an emphasis on three things: diversion, prevention, and intervention. Diversion through our recreational activities and workforce development of placement of young people, usually throughout the summer and also through the school year. Our prevention through education, long-lasting mentee relationships fostered through staff at our center, and the folks that also work out on the street, our outreach workers. Intervention, again, through outreach, case management to out-of-school youth, systemic intervention through supporting expungement reform, and by offering vocational training opportunities to youth who have fallen through the traditional track of education. Here at the agency, we offer our young folks now starting this year a youth build track option. If they're no longer in high school or in between the ages of 18, 24, it doesn't matter what the criminal record may look like. Now we bring them in, and within a year, they can finish with their high school diploma equivalency. We have a phenomenal group of educators in the building. Not only that, but they can also decide to pick up any which one of the tracks, be it in construction or in the health career fields, and they graduate with an industry recognized credential. And so essentially, you know, what education hasn't been able to do in 4 years with young people, through this model, we do it all within a year for them, and then help them afterwards with follow-up case management, and we follow them to make sure that they then get a job. Oftentimes in education, as I've been part of other groups with participatory action research, with a group in Smith College, we were using the illustration that with traditional education, our young people are surrounded by all of these lifeguards, and all of a sudden after they graduate, they're sent out to kind of swim at your own risk and nobody's on duty. And the beauty of it is here at NNCC, not only do they graduate, but we follow up with them. We stay with them after they're done with the treatment plan. I was having a conversation with someone this week. If there's still some present needs, some pressing social needs, we create another treatment plan, and to continue to work on some of the basic goals and the vision that that young person may have for their life. And right now we currently serve 200 plus young people, just out of school youth between the ages of 17 and 24. When it comes to our younger population, ages 11 to 16, we serve 150 young people. And then even over the summer, as we do placement for jobs, usually with those young folks that are juniors and seniors in high school. But one of the big things that the philosophies that we carry here at the agency that I want to share with everybody, and I've constantly shared, is we don't believe that there's such thing as a bad young person. We don't believe that there's a young person that is inherently bad. I've always shared with my colleagues, with my staff, with my team, that we understand that there are young folks that are in less than desirable circumstances. We look at how do we intervene with their social crisis, how do we intervene with some of the systemic things, and how do we overcome some of the things that they're going with. And there I'll render my time. I haven't had any signals yet, so I perhaps have a couple more minutes, but I'll make up for those that spilt over a tad bit.
You did amazing, Josiah, right on time. Thank you so much for sharing some of the work that North Citizens Council has been engaged in. I am really floored by how many youth you're working with and the program that you have within, that they graduate with an industry credential within 1 year. What was particularly touching for me was that you noted the follow-up. It's not just about graduating, it's about how do we continue to keep in contact. The most powerful part for me that I really had to note down was what you said, there is no such thing as a bad young person. That really grounded me. And I'd like to carry that. I'd like to zoom in now Trevor, if you could please introduce yourself and share how you've been impacted by the school to prison pipeline.
Hello, my name is Trevor, Trevor Gale. I'm born and raised in Springfield. I went to a couple of schools, but I couldn't get it together because, I was always getting picked on. I was the shortest guy in school, you know what I mean? And I didn't have you know, I didn't have that motivation to even go back to school. So, you know what I mean? A lot of fights, a lot of things that were just I couldn't get it together. But what it is that what kind of got me is that when I went to Roca and actually started letting them know the certain situations, they kind of just told me it was okay. You know what I mean? I didn't graduate, I didn't finish school, I didn't do any of that. They actually, motivated me in the most ways. But I know I'm going off topic a little bit, but I just really wanted to let you guys know that, I feel like in the schools that we need a lot more mentors. We need a lot more people that can boost the kids up. You know what I mean? Like I didn't get any of that. They told me to figure it out and I had to figure it out, but it was very difficult. I didn't have anybody to hey, Trevor, you're doing the wrong thing. Hey, you need to stop doing what you're doing. You need to stop hanging out with this group. You need to, you know what I mean? I didn't get any of that. So it was very difficult for me to kind of to grow up. Roca actually did a lot for me. But what I feel like what needs to happen into the schools is I feel like, we need to if the kids mess up, we need proper consequences. You know what I mean? Not the jail or because some kids, I used to be one of them. I never, you know what I mean? I never had fancy clothes going to school. I always got picked on, I always got bullied, so I always wanted to fight. You know what I mean? But if I had somebody that was like, oh, it's okay to wear those type of clothes. It's not the person that's wearing the clothes. You know what I mean? I mean, it's not the clothes that's, that's making you popular, or it's not the clothes that's actually, doing it for you. It's the person itself. And I just feel like we just need a lot more, mentors inside the school, especially for the young kids, like the schools, we have the internet and a lot of the stuff that's on the internet that kind of makes the kids want to act out. We have a lot of the videos that are, being recorded from the fights and stuff like that. Like this is what's making all the kids go crazy and making the kids not, focus. You know what I mean? If we had positive mentors, positive, proper consequences, you know what I mean? Then I feel like there won't be a lot of people going to the jails. You know what I mean? I was one of the guys that got committed to DYS. And because I wanted to be a follower, that's what, that's how I happened. I followed, I couldn't, everybody was picking on me. I needed to stand out. I wanted to be the popular guy. I didn't want to get talked about anymore. So I did what these people told me to do. So I feel like if we had positive mentors around, even with the teachers, you know what I mean? Like the teachers need to actually upgrade and instead of giving up on the kids and they need to just let us know, hey, this person needs special attention as far as with the schools because he can't get it together or she can't get it together. You know what I mean? I just feel like I said, we just need positive and proper, consequences, for the young kids that can't get right or that can't get it together. You know what I mean? I agree with everybody here on this panel. me, I'm a maintenance worker. So anybody, like any young kid that looks at me and sees me, I try to let them know that, you know, you can turn it around. You can definitely do, you can do what I'm doing, you can do plus more. But I'm a guy in the community that fix things. And they say, "Oh, Trevor, you're so young with all this knowledge of fixing things. What do you do? How do you do it?" I mean, Roca has showed me a lot of a lot of key points to kind of like stay focused. So, I mean, if Roca was in the schools, I feel like a lot of the kids would not be doing what they're doing. But that's all I got to say, truthfully.
Thank you so much, Trevor. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for sharing your journey with us, parts of your journey with us. We don't take it lightly that you're here and you're sharing your perspective. I particularly loved your points on having more positive mentorships for students at schools and teachers developing authentic relationships with students so that they're able to better intervene. And the one that really resounded with me was proper consequences. Not an idea of no consequences, but proper, measured consequences. Lastly, I'd like to say just thank you. I appreciate that you're a part of my community. Thank you for being on this panel.
It's just one more thing. It's just, it feels not saying weird or anything like that, but I just want to say thank you because, you know, I was once on the other side, you know, talking about, you know, wanting to get out and, you know, being behind the wall. I was once there. So just being here and actually speaking my piece to you guys, I just want to say thank you for even having me to even, you know, share some insight of what I actually feel about the whole school prison pipeline.
Trevor, yes, thank you. We appreciate you. And, you know, the matter of the fact is, Trevor is one of many men who have graduated from Roca's program. And I know that there are other amazing, phenomenal men like Trevor a part of this program. I'd actually like to dive deeper into Roca's work and how it's disrupting the school to prison pipeline. I'd like to pass it to Chris now.
Hey everyone. So first of all, Trevor, thank you so much. I'm fighting back the tears of love over here and gratitude to have the ability to know you and watch you grow up and be with you on that journey. So I'm so humbled and appreciative of you. So that's number one. So I'm Chris Judd. I'm the director of Roca Springfield Holyoke, Western Mass. And I've been a part of Roca for 10 years now. I can't even believe it. And I previously had worked at Cathedral High School, and I was there. I grew up there basically. I was there for 12 years, started there when I was 22. And so I've been working with young people since I was 18 years old. And one of the things that really drew me to Roca was that I was able to continue my work. And in between Cathedral and Roca, I worked a very short tidbit, about a year with the Sheriff's Department, and I knew that getting back to the young people was the foremost important. And what I really appreciated about Roca is that trauma doesn't have to define you at all, and that is a big piece of it. So we have 4 major things that we do within our model, and I'm really only going to touch about 2. One is create safety and stability. Number 2 is teach life-saving skills. 3 is practice, 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 and we really build relapse into our program. And we do that because nobody, and even if you think about just losing weight, none of us change our behaviors without failing and restarting. So I think about my own weight loss process, and I think I've done probably in COVID 5 different diets. And so then the other piece is what we're doing right now is collaboration, engage institutions piece. But what I really want to talk about is our first one is creating stability and safety. So we do relentless outreach, and through that relentless outreach, we are really building relationships. We're relationship we want to really understand and build trust so that we can push our young people to behavior change. And so that is the second piece of it, which is, flip the slide, sorry, we want to teach life-saving skills. So our work on the ground, and we really have transformed in the last probably 6-7 years around our behavior change aspect. So we have dived into our cognitive behavior theory, which is CBT, which is basically, understanding that situations are going to affect how we think, how we feel, and how we respond. So we call it the think, feel, do cycle. And when you talk about trauma in the brain, I'm just thinking about this morning, real life, right? It's student loan time and income driven, and you put that in and you're like, all right. And every year you get a little bit of more money and your income for your student loans go up. So that got me hot this morning. And I was in my feelings about it. And so it triggered me and it put me into my bottom brain, which our bottom brains are the most primitive part of our brain. It's just our life, it allows us to breathe, it allows us to react. It's the fight, flight, or freeze. And we all have it. So and when we do that, we kind of lose sight of our frontal part of ours. So when we're in that survival mode in our bottom brain, we everything affects it. So we have, we might get dry mouth. We might feel our rapid pulse. We might get irritable. And then we might say things that we don't mean. And so we really cut off the pathways from our lower brain to our frontal cortex, which is our thinking brain. And so what we have done here at Roca is that we've developed 7 quick hits, if you will. Those quick hits really, the simple skills. So move it, stick with it, act in your values, flex your thinking, because when I get into my cycle, it's always a thinking cycle. So I always have to flex my thinking. And then I go into like the solve it mode, which, the solve it mode for me, I'm a fixer and I gotta fix it. So a lot of times I go from the think, the feel piece, and the do piece usually is I need to call someone and have them level me out a little bit. But we have all of these, and these skills really we go after these young people, and not go after, but we stalk them legally. We stalk them, and we really hone in on these skills. And we have flip cards, and we have tablets, and we have visuals, and we send it to them in Messenger, and we use all social media platforms. But the idea is that over conversations, over and over and over again, these young people are going to use these skills, and a lot of times they use them on us, which is quite amazing. And I think the best story I have is one that if you go on the TEDx, Molly Baldwin, our CEO and founder, did a TEDx conversation a long time ago, I don't know how many years ago it seems like, but when she did it, she used the story, and it was from a young person in Roca, Springfield, and it was a young person who went to a local park, and it was when we first did CBT, and this young person was at the park with his family, and he saw a rival gang member, and immediately he called his buddies up and said, you know what, because it was on site for this. And the trauma was just so deep, and he went right into his lower brain, and that trauma piece didn't allow him to think clearly. But so he called his buddy and said, hey, go get my gun, go get my bag. And so when he did that, it took a few minutes for that young person to come with his bag. And during that time, he really thought about it, allowed him that time, that 30 seconds to 20 minutes, whatever it was, allowed him to process all the tools that we gave him with the CBT. And by the time the person got there, he thought about the values in which being a father, being a partner, and how important it was for him to stay out of jail and not traumatize his own son, not traumatize the other person. And he actually thought about that process and said, you know what, I'm going to flex my thinking here. He might not have seen me, or he might not have really, we're in the park with our young people and with our children. I'm all set. So when the gun got there, he's like, I'm all set. And the other person said, no, I'm gonna take care of this. You were disrespected. And he's like, nope, because this is what's going to happen. This is just one of many examples of CBT use and what we've seen over the years. And what we're finding is a lot of our young people come into Roca with violent crimes and, you know, committed violent acts. Guess what? After 4 years of CBT, because we have the data to prove that, they're not committing those violent crimes. They're actually might get a violation of probation for not paying a fine, or they might get a driving without a license, or that's about it. Otherwise, it's all nonviolence, which is what we want to see. And at Roca, over time, what we're seeing is 92% of our young people stay out of jail. So this is just alternatives to CBT is one alternative to you know, dealing with the trauma. And then what Trevor alluded to was because he was prior to CBT, but we did a lot of restorative justice circles with Trevor and a lot of restorative justice circles currently. And we've, you know, through COVID, Molly has created online and doing kind of like this. But as we're opening up, we're going to be doing it in person, which we're so excited about. So I know I probably went over my time. I'm not even seeing, but yep, time check, Tatiana, thank you. And everybody's laughing at me about being the time guru, but you guys, thank you so much, and thank you, Trevor, and I give it back to Tati.
Chris, no worries. I did not want to stop you. It was good flow. Thank you for bringing us deeper into Roca's work. I was really appreciative of the life-saving skills portion, particularly the way that it grounds folks back in their minds and bodies so that they're better able to move into solvent mode and then into actions. I'd like to pass along the conversation now to Ed Case. Ed, we'd love for you to introduce yourself and how your work at the Sheriff's Department impacts the school to prison pipeline.
Thank you, Tatiana. Hi, everybody. My name's Eddie Case. I actually been working at the Sheriff's Department for 28 years. I do want to say thank you to Chris, Judd, and Roca, because the issues that I have seen over the 28 years working there, the issues in our community are really comprehensive. And I believe that it takes multi-agencies working together for Roca to create a space like this where we can talk about a topic like this and then afterwards really put some strategic plans together. So the high-risk reentry program that I've been running, I really focus on guys that have very specific charges. So I have seen firsthand what the root causes that actually led these guys go down the wrong roads. I can tell you many times over the years how many times I met with an inmate to say he never had a shot. You know, he grew up in a poverty neighborhood. He grew up without his biological father. He grew up in a neighborhood that was riddled with gang members, drug dealers, and criminal and negativity, just where the deck was actually stacked against him. I like what you said, Trevor. You said that we need more mentors. So for us, one of the things the sheriff allows me to do is oversee a group of staff in Springfield and Holyoke to really do this community work and really engage in and working with agencies to put comprehensive plans together to make impacts. You know, I started the Holyoke Safe Neighborhood Initiative in 2011. The graduation rate was 48%. Watching so many agencies come together, I mean, the school system, all the different agencies really working together and impact and being intentional to impact the lives of these kids, giving them additional positive things to do, like basketball leagues and table tennis clubs and volleyball and football and all these boxing, all these different activities, but then putting the character development curriculum connected to it and having our volunteers be really intentional about mentoring these kids and taking advantage of teaching moments. But working with all these different agencies, one of the big things that we've been working on in Hampden County is actually a mentoring movement. So to speak to Trevor's point, I mean, we're looking to do a mentoring movement in Hampden County and to get hundreds of kids in Springfield and Holyoke connected to additional caring adults, because we're looking at the stats, we're looking at the information. When we started in 2011, we piloted a little program down in South Holyoke and knocked on 400 doors, found out that 65% of the kids out of 400 doors we knocked on never attended an after-school activity or an after-school program. So what we did with all the agencies, our networking meeting gets 50, 60, 70 different agencies coming together every month. And we utilize those different agencies to work with us to really impact these programs. So after 10 years, we've seen the graduation rate go from 48% to 73%. Yes, a ton of agencies in Holyoke doing great things, but that just shows that when you can identify what an issue is and you work together as a team, you can make great impacts. That survey that we did in 2012 when we knocked on 400 doors, we found out 65% of the kids that never attend after school program just using that school in the neighborhood. We started table tennis clubs, boxing programs, flag footballs. We did the survey a year later and found out that 63% of those kids, same families, are saying their kids are now involved in an after-school activity. So it's just examples that working together, and that's why I'm so excited about this. And Dr. Williams, I wanted to comment on something you said. You said that a lot of young people, particularly brown and black kids, don't really know that they could become a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, a professional. So I want to share that right before COVID hit, we ran our 12-week basketball league, and we brought in a lot of speakers. It was a career development, even for 3rd through 6th graders, to expose these kids in 3rd through 6th grade, to let them know that these are opportunities for you. And I think the best part about that was we were able to get so many young professionals that were brown and black skinned to come in and talk to them. In addition to the partnership with Westover Job Corps, talking to the kids saying, hey, I came from the same neighborhood. I was exposed to the same things, but I'm in this career path. I'm about ready to graduate Westover and get into a career path that's going to pay me $50,000, $60,000 a year. So when you said that, Dr. Williams, that's exactly the kind of work that we're doing. In fact, we're starting a summer basketball league right now. We're doing signups. In our 3rd through 6th graders, we're going to replicate that you can be anything you want to be curriculum. You know, sometimes we look at the issues in our community because they're so comprehensive and we just figure, where do you start? We can't get it done. But the truth is, with all of us together, we can get it done. And just to see that little work that we did over 10 years in Holyoke, to watch the graduation rate go from 48% to 73%, it's an example of what you can get done when you're intentional. So I got to tell you this. So what drives me is what I have learned from these high-risk offenders. You know, that how many of these kids that we could have impacted if we would have engaged with them when they were 10, 11, and 12 years old, got them connected to additional caring adults, got them involved in positive activities, and invested in them, educated them, motivated them, loved them, and get them to understand that they can be anything they want to be. So that's the work that we're trying to do. And Katie's on the line, and I've been working with JDAI for the past 3 or 4 years. And we've always been looking at trying to combat those racial disparities in the incarceration. So there's teams of people working on it. We just got to continue to grow those teams and continue to bring educated, passionate people who really care about impacting lives of youth and family, bring them to the table, and let's be encouraged that we can get this done. Because I believe with everything I have that together we can really get this thing done. So again, Chris, thank you so much for creating this space tonight and for giving me an opportunity to share a couple things. So thank you, everybody. Thank you all for being here as well.
Woo! Ed, your energy is contagious. Thank you. I feel pumped. I particularly loved your emphasis on multi-agencies working together to analyze root causes. I love the way that you narrated for us what multi-agencies working together over an extended period of time can do for a community. Seeing that percentage of 48% to 70, sorry, I didn't catch the last part, 76, I believe, percent, a jump in graduation rate is incredibly impressive. And I really liked, what I most liked is even when you were talking about the basketball league that you've created and this link between after school programs and just like being engaged, what I like is that you introduced that theme of career development, right? We're not just going to do an after school program, but we're letting you see vision forward. All of that to say, I appreciated your outlook in wanting us to have a comprehensive plan to make an impact throughout organizations. Whew. Now, last but certainly not least, we'd love to hear from you, State Representative Bud Williams. We are super excited to have you here. Could you please bring us into how you are actively reforming this system?
Okay. First of all, thank you for being a part of this amazing panelists, and I'm glad I was the last. I've actually learned a lot, and folks have been so great. What I think, let me get myself situated here. Okay. What, you've been good all day. First of all, thank you. This amazing panelists, and to my wife, Dr. Gloria Williams, outstanding job. And this has been phenomenal. And to your executive director, Molly Bish, CEO of Roca, and to you, Christine Judd, you've done an amazing job. You've done a lot of work, and you've been really good. First of all, I hear it's almost, I was listening to testimony, the New North Citizens Council, Bob Revere, part of that, growing up on the north end of Springfield, the Springfield Public School System, the Sheriff's Department with Mike Ash going way back. This has been good. And Trevor, thank you for that testimony. I've been a youth director. I worked at the Dunbar Community Center. I've coached. I've been a teacher. I've been a mentor. I've been a probation officer. I've been a politician, a city councilor, and now a state representative. And my latest assignment is that, we just did criminal justice reform 2020 for the Commonwealth. And out of that came a very committee that people in Beacon Hill really wanted to do. They formed a racial justice, social equity, civil rights committee, which I am the House chairperson. And my colleague in the Senate is Senator Sonia Diaz. So we have the responsibility of looking at the whole Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the systematic racism that exists in every single aspect of the Commonwealth. It's a heck of a charge. I'm gonna need a lot of help, but I'm prepared to try and deal with it. And but I'd like to start with what Trevor had said. And he talked about more mentors. And that's why we formed, when we did the Opportunity Act. And then the Cherish Act came before that. That was the Educational Act. And what we said was that we needed more mentors, we needed more counselors, we needed more social workers in the Springfield public school systems and the systems throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So Trevor, hopefully help is on the way. And we know that this prison to pipeline is fueled by presence of police officers in the schools. School funding have been cut. That means there are fewer counselors, there are fewer school programs, there are fewer music programs, there are fewer art programs, there are fewer drama programs, there are fewer swimming programs. All that leads up to this prison to pipeline. And we know Black and brown individuals are more likely to be penalized by this system. And we did do a couple of things with the criminal justice reform bill. And I'm going to focus on the piece that the juveniles will really benefit by. And other than the excessive force, the post, the civil service, what we were going to require is that school resource officers in these public schools in the Commonwealth now have to have training, certified training in dealing with young people. That's one aspect. The other aspect was that we realized that we looked at it, and I'm not for police officers being in schools. I'm totally against it. But the compromise that was reached on Beacon Hill was that the superintendent of each school district will determine whether or not police officers will be in their school. So if you want to connect with your superintendent, he has the final say, not the mayor, the superintendent. So if there's a police officer in the Springfield public school system, you want to talk about it, you need to call the superintendent Ward. The other piece is that now that parents don't have to testify against their children, and children don't have to testify against the parents. That was part of the criminal justice reform. Also, when we raised the age in 2013 to 18, that cut down juvenile delinquency by 34%. There's a move on Beacon Hill to raise this age to 20, 21. and you will still be considered a juvenile. We really feel that the mental aspect and your brain isn't fully developed at 17 and 18. So stay tuned for that. And also, when you're a juvenile up to the age of 21, and you had 2 or more offenses on your record, you can get those expunged. And I talk about expungement because it's really, really important. Expungement means that the record on your query is erased. It's not there. We know when you have a query, when you're in the Springfield public school system, you go down to juvenile court at the age of 9 or 10 before the law passed, you had that juvenile record with you for the rest of your life. The query does not ever, ever go away. When it's expunged or a governor's pardon, it goes away. So when you're a juvenile now, up to the age of 21, you get the opportunity to take 2 cases off of your record, expunged. You have to petition the court, and any questions you can call me and I'll direct you in the proper place. I think that was pretty good. Also, we know that systematic racism, and I think the very first, my wife touched upon it, and the very first speaker touched upon it. We have to get to the root cause. And we know that the root cause, poverty, wealth, and until we really get into that, we're rolling a rock up the side of a mountain. It's almost impossible when Black and brown people start behind. It's like a race, and we're running a race, and I start on a 1-yard line, you start on the 10-yard line, we're running a 15-yard race. So we really have to dig deep into this poverty thing, how we level the playing field, and how do we make opportunity available for each and every one of us. And I think my wife said it earlier, some of these individuals predestined when they're in the womb of their mother that they're going to be put in jail. And we're not going to build many more jails because we know jails were the fastest growing industry in the country. And most of those jails are occupied by Black and brown people. So we're going to put a stop to a lot of that. But how do we get to the root causes? Well, a lot of work, a lot of sharing, a lot of wealth building. You know, Black and brown people, the white population, Black and brown people are 50, 60 times in poverty, don't have the resources. It's tough. So I'm going to close with this. I had filed a bill last year along with Senator Nick Collins out of South Boston. And we call it was House Bill 5199. And it's a recovery bill. It's a reparation recovery bill. And what that does, it really levels the playing field in terms of putting job development for young people, putting them to work, putting them in schools, putting them in school, and just paying and giving them the help that they need. Mentoring does work. I'm going to close with this. I was one of 10 kids on the north end of Springfield. Turned out pretty good. Poor. I'll give you another example. My wife, north end of Springfield, one of 7 kids, grew up poor. Turned out pretty good. Another young man that's been getting a lot of fame lately, one of the most powerful men in America, in the world, Richie Neal, grew up on the north end of Springfield, Essex Street, which was the street I grew up on. Turned out pretty good. Poor kid. So when you have the right mentoring, the right role models, and I use the Boys Club as an example. I lived in the Boys Club, learned my trade, so to speak, with Art Jones and the Mark Morans of the world. So it does make a difference. Mentoring does make a difference. In that case, I know you folks at the jail have been doing that. Mike started and Sheriff Coach is doing a fantastic job. But mentoring does work. We need to do more mentoring. And by the way, we need to get to a lot of these young people before they get into the system. because once you get into the system, you're kind of trapped. I'm going to close with that. We have to figure a way, once they're in the system, we work with them, but what do we do to get them before they get to the system? All those opportunities, all those pathways, all the help, all the mentoring, we need to do it before they get a record. I know I've exhausted my time. I'm going to close with that, and I'm just happy to be part of this great and amazing panel. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative Bud Williams. I appreciated all of your insights. Thank you so much for spending this evening with us. I particularly appreciated you telling us the very tangible ways in which you're working to impact the system, particularly with the Cherish Act, and most recently with the Opportunity Act to get more mentors and counselors into schools. I found it really important for you to note the changes with school resource officers, particularly now that they'll be required to have more training. The piece that really moved me is that superintendents will have the autonomy to decide. So I felt really empowered to know that I can write a letter to my superintendent saying, hey, I wouldn't like this for the school that, you know, my folks go to. I'd also like to thank you for for asking us to continue to investigate root causes, as all of our panelists have mentioned today. I'd like to take a moment to welcome all of our audience members to type in any questions into the chat. I'll give you guys a few seconds to write that in, and I do have my first question lined up, so I'll give you some thinking time. Okay, if it is okay with everyone, I am going to get started with the first question, which came up pretty early. Dr. Williams, how could you share with the audience how they can learn more about your organization, COBE?
Oh, absolutely. You can reach us at COROFS@gmail.com. And I also can give you my personal email. It's GLOK at Comcast. I'm sorry, GLOK, the number 2 at Comcast.net.
Awesome.
I'd put it in the chat, but I'm afraid of this technology. It might go, my computer might go off.
Thank you so much, Dr. Williams.
Welcome.
I'm going to open this next question up to whichever panelist feels they can speak to it. Panelists, what actions could our audience members take today, tomorrow, or in the weeks to come to positively impact change within this system?
The educational system, I think voices. What I find oftentimes is people sit back and they complain. They have the park lot conversations, as we call them, but there are strength and united voices. If you see something, you want to address it, then you mobilize. For instance, the resource officers in the schools, now you know that the superintendents have that autonomy, as you say, to determine whether or not they're going to have resources. So if the community activists mobilize themselves and then start a letter writing campaign and let your voices be heard rather than just waiting, because oftentimes we want to wait and see what happens rather than making, things happen. So you have to mobilize the community. I think our our parents have come through a system that makes, well, I won't say makes them feel uncomfortable, but they are uncomfortable within the system. And I think there are so many societal ills out there that the parents are struggling to do their very best just to feed their children, send them to school. And I think some of them have become disillusioned and have just given up in some cases. So I think that community activists such as Mr. Gonzalez and what is it, Mr. Casey, is that how you say your name? And all of you, just outreach with community and become more vocal about what you want. This is your community, your system, your students, your children. I think the Roca, I read the newspaper article a couple weeks ago about the programs and the difference they're making in the lives of students, of community people. I think that's really wonderful. But I think, as Rep said, we really need to get the students and the young people before they get to the program. But Roca, I read that article and I said, wow, they're making a difference. It's a struggle, kind of, from what I've read, but people are working really hard to make a difference in the lives of those folks who did get caught up in the PRISM system.
Thank you so much, Dr. Williams. I'll open the question to anyone else who'd like to share some action-based steps for our audience members. And if you could please keep your comments to a minute, that would be greatly appreciated.
So first of all, thank you, Dr. Williams. I agree with you 100% in everything that you said. And I also just want to add, because I know they're doing this in Holyoke Public Schools, they have the Polenta program. I'm saying that right, Ed? Polenta? But
Lante.
but Polente. That's what it is, Polente. Sorry about that. But they're doing restorative justice circles in the school system. So I think it would be great to replicate Polente into the public school systems. And Dr. Williams, I don't know if you're familiar with that program, but it would be great to even get Kobe involved in the process. We do a lot of restorative justice circle trainings, and I would love to have your whole coalition be a part of the trainings with us. And that way you all can introduce, you sit through that training and then you can introduce it into the school system.
I'll share that with my colleagues.
That'd be great.
Go ahead, please.
Oh, okay, I just raised my hand. Yeah, okay, thank you. And also I want to say, great panel, Christine, I really mean that. And the other piece, the other piece, we need and we've been studying this on Beacon Hill and in dealing with Chairman Driscoll in terms of having more Black and brown teachers and educators and folks involved in the criminal justice system. That's going to be a key, because a lot of times folks don't see any Black males or Latino males until they, go to jail or something. But so the point has to be, we really need to focus on really integrating and bringing more a multicultural approach to folks who are at the leadership positions, not just the clients. And I've been working with Chairwoman Peisch, who's the educational chair in the House, in terms of making sure that we address that, because there's a shortage of Black and brown folks in the education system and the criminal justice system. Now, in some pockets, Sheriff Coachy does a great job with integration. He has a lot of Black and brown folks working there, but other pockets within community, there's not a lot of Black and brown folks in leadership positions and dealing with these young people. And the other thing I wanted to say, this prison, the school to prison pipeline is real. It's real, and I know these type of forums.
I'm sorry, Representative, your sound went out. Is that happening for anyone else?
Well,
Oh, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
you can hear me now. I was just saying, I
Yes.
want to thank Christine again, but this systematic racism is real. And if we understand, I'm going to underline this again. And folks who want to do something, Opportunity Act, there's money coming to all of school systems throughout the country. What we did, we tried to take the poor school systems and make them equal with the more influential systems. So we're giving you more money. That money's going to be spent. Now, if that money's going to be spent wherever you are, Holyoke, Springfield, Chicopee, it doesn't matter. You should be at your school committee people, at your superintendent, and prioritizing what you feel is important. Those mentors are important. More counselors are important. More social. And what the other point is this mental health aspect, which because of COVID and the isolation that has existed with young people and people, it's been very difficult. It's real. So the mental health aspect, we got to deal with that also. So I'll close with that. And the other point, that resource officer training, they have to be certified. And if they do an incident in the school system, like we had at the Commerce High School, they'll go before a state board. If they're found to be, guilty as charged, they will be dismissed. We didn't have that before, but this criminal justice piece, we've done that not only with the school resource officers, but the post, which is it's a certification now of police officer. They have to get certified like a lawyer or a doctor or an insurance agent or a plumber or an electrician. So they'll have to get certified, and if anything happens that, God forbid, they brought up on charges like anybody else. So there's some good, strong points, but we're going to try to raise that juvenile age to at least, I'm trying to get it to 21, and you'll still be a juvenile age of 21.
Thank you so much, Representative. If it's okay with you all, I'm going to read a question here from Stephanie. Stephanie's asking, does Springfield have a full-time employee whose job it is to address gun violence? Who is involved? Who is involved? Where does it happen? How are the guns procured? What is the impact of gun violence on the community? Not the police department, someone independent of Springfield Police Department. If not, should there be one? I want to maybe throw this to Ed, if you feel comfortable. If not, anyone else who feels they can answer this.
Yeah,
It's just,
I'm sorry.
I don't know if there's if they have one, I don't know about it. I don't know of any municipality that has someone in charge of a gun. What was the question again? A gun unit?
An employee whose job it is to address gun violence.
No, I don't. I'm not. No, I don't know. I'm not familiar.
I can speak to that a little. So the program that I've been running for the last 15 years focuses on charges. I didn't tell you earlier what the charges were, but it's possession of a firearm. So that's a program that tries to wrap around intensive services for guys that have these type charges. So to answer your question in terms of, is there a full-time person in Springfield that does that? Probably not. I know the New North Citizens Council has a program that's dealing with the gun violence, but that's the job that I've been doing for the last 15 years, is working with inmates that have those charges and really trying to mentor them, educate them, build solid release plans with them, really encourage them, educate them. We have, we have the law enforcement agencies come in and talk to them. We have service providers come in. We really do everything to get them engaged with the community even before they left. We do a lot of work with Roca in terms of getting those 18 to 24-year-olds connected to them. So I know it doesn't totally answer your question, but that is happening.
Thank you so much, Ed. And I'm looking at my time. We are right there, folks. Thank you so much to every single one of our panelists. I wish we had more time to ask more questions, Personally, myself, I have about 5 for each of you. Audience, thank you so much for engaging, for your thoughtful comments, for the energy in the chat. I really appreciate it, and I know our panelists did as well. Like I said at the beginning of this, thank you for spending your Wednesday evening with us. It is not lost on us. We hope that you walk away with a deeper insight into the school to prison pipeline, specifically within the Hampden County. And finally, I will pass it off to Chris to close us off.
Could I just make a comment and thank you, Ms. Soto.
Thank you for the job you've done. You've been an amazing moderator. Excellent moderator. Thank you.
I had to get that in.
Thank you so much.
We had to get it in.
Okay.
Well, first of all, I just want to, from heartfelt thanks to all of you and Dr. Williams, State Representative Bud Williams. Thank you for, I have not had the opportunity to collaborate with you in a more close manner, but I know that we're going forward, we'll be able to do that. So I really appreciate it. And Trevor, it's always a blessing. Katie, you always, you blow me away with your passion. And Ed, your passion is unreal. It's unreal. So I just want to say thank you so much. And again, behind the scenes and the moderator, Tatiana, amazing. Ellie, amazing. Teach for America. They've been a blessing. And I do have board members, administrators, and so many people watching this. It is just a privilege to be here. And, around the next panel or next group is in June. And I know Tatiana's going to talk about that real quick. And it's in June, and it's going to address urban violence. So please come and join us on that, because that is another big topic that needs to be addressed in our community. So, and I think we can do that with gun violence and have a lot of that conversation around the gun violence next month. So thank you so much, and it's a privilege. So Tatiana.
Thank you, Chris. Stephanie, it's like you read our minds and knew that this was coming up. This is why I took your question. Please join us in June. It is the last portion of our spring webinar series. We're really excited to get at this charge, and we welcome you to share this with your colleagues, with your friends, with your family members, to be a part of this conversation and to continue to create impact. Y'all have a great night, and see you next time.
Teamwork makes the dream work all the time. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, folks.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ms. Judd, awesome.